with this notion that it really is all about love. That God created us to love. Okay, and to be in a relationship which ultimately is called love. That's a better way of putting it. Because if you remember why does God create us in the first place? God is there, God exists, but nothing else exists. So if nothing else exists except you, then your existence has no meaning. God's existence had zero meaning. And so God decided I need to create something with whom I can have a relationship so that God's existence has meaning. And so God creates this very, very powerful creature called us. And God gives us free will to reject him, because you can't have real love if you don't have the possibility of not love, which has got to hurt God. If you wanted someone to love you, and they don't, they have the right not to, but that probably hurts. But we have this relationship, and the Torah is in some ways, especially in this parsha, the tap dance that two people who might someday be in love dance. Because love is the end game. Okay, we have to put something out of our head. In Western civilization, love is the starting point. Okay, that I love you and therefore I will marry you, I will do this, I will take care of you, I will be responsible. That love is the starting point in Western civilization. In Jewish thinking, love is the end point. Okay, it's what you do right before you die. If you're lucky. And you're good at it. Okay? And you know who said this best? Okay? Golda. When Tevye says, do you love me? Because he liked all the newfangled things that his children are talking about. And what does Golda say? For 25 years I've cooked for you, I've slept with you, I've cleaned for you. If that's not love, what is? Okay? It's the end game. It's what comes after all the hard work. It's not what causes the hard work, it is the result of the hard work. So, we have the beginning, we are able to witness here the first few moments of this love relationship between God and the Jewish people starting to unfold. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty. A relationship with God is hard. It's hard, it's painful on both sides. It's tricky. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and sometimes you take 1 step forward and 2 steps back. But that's what love is. Anyone who has been in love, or anyone who wants to be in love, knows it's not easy. It's complicated, and it's hard, and we mess up. And that shouldn't be any different in our relationship with God. And it takes time, and you can't take things for granted. The same, just think about people, and then apply it to God. And remember that God has feelings too. Okay, that we can hurt God's feelings. So I want to go through some of the things in the Parsha and see what lessons we can learn about relationships and love, whether it be with regard to people in our lives or perhaps in our relationship to God. So I'm going to start, I just took more time than I wanted to do, just that. Let's start at the very end of Shirat Hayam, the very end of the song. Yeah, I'm on page 368. If you don't have a Chumash, don't worry about it. I'm going to quote everything out loud. There's only 4 words in the sentence, so we'll remember it. At the very end of the song, the people sing Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Okay, it's verse 18. Page 368, verse 18. Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. And if I'm going properly, I pointed out, this is the first time that there was ever a song, and this is the first time that anyone had ever called God King. We call God King all the time. every time you say a bracha, and Eloheinu melech haolam, God is the melech. We're not in love with the word king, particularly in America. We have a country founded against kings. But we've talked about this in IJKL, and what really king means. It doesn't really mean absolute power, because God does not have absolute power, and anyone who thinks that God has absolute power hasn't read Torah and hasn't studied Judaism. God does not have absolute power. The very first thing that God said to human beings is, Puru urvu v'chivshu et haaretz. You run the world. Be fruitful and multiply. The very first statement of God is one in which he cedes power. Please forgive the master of the program. I don't intend for God to be associated with a male. It slips. Okay. So it's not really about power. It's about owning everything. The king becomes the king because the king owns the kingdom. But I'm not going to go there. If we have time later, we can come back to that. Maybe at the Fabrengen it will work. But I want to teach you a halacha about kings. The halacha is, as it's quoted in the Rambam in Maimonides, and by the way, how cool is it that you guys studied Rambam on Shabbos morning? Rabbi Uri Yashikoach, how beautiful is that? You guys got to get here earlier, because it's at the beginning. It's beautiful. It's unbelievably beautiful. I've never seen it. So it's Yashikoach. Maimonides says, ready? That a wife has to treat her husband like a king. Anybody surprised?
No.
Now, by the way, the halacha, there's no reason why it shouldn't be the other way around. A husband has to treat his wife like a queen. But the question is, why do we have to why does my wife have to treat me like a king? And I'm not going to make it a big discussion because we don't have a lot of time. Why does your wife have to treat you like a king? Because your wife is the only person in the world who knows with complete surety that you are not a king. Okay? You can fake everybody else out, but your spouse knows that you are not a king, and you are not a queen, and you are not royalty. Because our spouses see everything that's wrong. You can't hide. You stand, not just physically, but metaphorically naked in front of your spouse. You can't hide anything. So why is the halacha that you have to treat them like a king or a queen? Because you have to make a decision. What's going to define your relationship with them? What's wrong or what's right? And it's very easy to fall into a pattern in a love relationship where the things that are wrong with the person become the defining issue in the relationship. So Judaism comes and says you need to fight that inclination. You have to think of your spouse mamish as royalty, even though you know they aren't. Because that act, that behavior, will help you to overcome thinking about what's wrong and using what's wrong or allowing what's wrong to be defining in the relationship. And I think it's, to a certain extent, when we proclaim God King, we know that God isn't perfect. We know that God makes mistakes. At the Fabrengen, we're going to talk about some issues with God. But God's the Melech. Because I don't want my problems with God to be the defining relationship. If I'm going to be in a relationship with God, and that relationship is ultimately going to be called something called love, then I too have to treat my lover like a melech. Because if I don't, then I will allow my frustrations and my anger to actually start to define how I think and how I act toward my lover. And that's not right. Okay, as soon as the song is over, it's time to leave. Time to leave and go be a nation. So, look on page 370, in the Hebrew 371, at verse 22. Moses led them from the Red Sea, and they went out to the wilderness of Shur. Led them is, yeah, I mean, that's okay. You know what Moses did? He schlepped them. Okay, in all of the commentaries and the readings, they didn't want to go. That Moses actually had to convince them to go. I mean, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around that, right? Like, we're out of here. Let's go. No. Why didn't they want to go? And here, this is not in the Torah. This is in the rabbinic readings, in the Talmud, in the Midrashim. There were two reasons why they didn't want to go. One was that they saw all of the jewels that had bedecked the chariots that got sunk. They floated to the top. And they wanted to chop the money. They wanted to take the jewels. They didn't want to leave before they had a chance to enrich themselves with the Egyptian jewels. There were others who say they didn't want to leave because they made a cheshbon. They figured something out. They said, wait a minute. If these guys are all dead, let's go back to Egypt. Remember when we used to kind of run Egypt, when we were the wealthy class? Let's go back to Egypt. It's safe now. I mean, that's actually not an entirely unreasonable thing to think. We've been in Egypt for hundreds of years. Let's go back. And we'll take over. We'll run it. They're scared of us. In either case, Moses had to convince them, shut up, let's go. But we're seeing something here, that even in a moment of Shirat Hayam, a moment of intense love characterized by the song, there's always some influence that makes us look at the possibility of love and say, maybe there's something better. Maybe love will wait while I chop some guilt. Or maybe my life was better, or my life would be better if I go in this direction rather than in that direction. I know my lover is begging for me to come with him, her, but I know how good it could be if I don't. There's always that's going on. In every love relationship. Always something that seems like a bigger priority, or something that makes us nervous about taking the step forward because the past, it might be better. And Moshe's coming to say you can't do that. You'll always have that, and I'm sure you can all think of this in your own life and in your own loves. The Torah is so aware of this, and we hear Moshe saying, I understand the guilt, and I understand how you could envision your past, but it's not the future. Because sometimes we have to give up. Not sometimes. We always have to give up something to be in love. Okay, we always have to make ourselves smaller. We always have to make ourselves poorer. We always have to give up control about the direction of our lives in order to be in love. You can't be calling all the shots if you're in love. There has to be a room, and there has to be this sense that I know I'm giving up stuff, and I know I'm giving up stuff that actually seems valuable to me. But ultimately, love is motivated, and the love of God is motivated by this idea that my life is ultimately going to be better, and I will become a better person by being in love with my lover. Yes, I'm giving up stuff, but I'm making a bet that my life with you is going to make me a better person than I would ever become if you weren't in my life. And that's this moment. That's this moment in this verse where our people listened to Moses and they traveled. Very powerful. And then they go then they go through a series of testing each other. You know, when you are in the process of trying to be in love, and being in love, and staying in love, there's a lot of testing. Because part of the balance of being in love, whether it's in love with a person or in love with God, is the balance of power. We all would like to have power. We'd all like to have some control. Now, I know I can't have all the control. We learned that from the last verse. But how much control do I actually have? Who's running this show? Now, in theory, it's 50-50, but it's never really 50-50. It's maybe in the aggregate it's 50-50, but sometimes it's, in some situations it's 60-40. In other situations it's 90-10. And at the beginning of the relationship, that can be problematic until you get used to that, until you get used to the fact that this kind of power struggle that's going on in a loving way, but it's a power struggle, that can actually be dangerous. And that's what happens here. In the language of the Torah is, we tested each other. We tested God. Well, you split a sea, but can you give us something to eat? Let's see you do that. Because if you can't do that, then what's the point? Oh, okay, you got the man, but can you do water? And then God comes along, and particularly with the man, and God says, I'm going to give you this man, but I'm going to give it in a way that's going to test you. God actually says, I'm testing you now. I want to see whether you will believe me when I tell you, pick up one omer, one bit of this, and take it home. Don't take more. Don't be a chazer, or it's gonna rot. As Rabbi already said, it's gonna rot. And on Shabbos, it's not going to happen. I want to see. I want to test you. I want to see if you can do this. Because really, what's the test? The test is faith. When I give you food on Monday, you can't take for Tuesday. So you have to have faith that I'm going to feed you on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And when I feed you on Tuesday, you can't take enough for Wednesday. So you have to have faith that I'm going to feed you on Wednesday. So in a sense, it's a kind of test, but it's also a practice in faith. We learn to trust each other in relationships. But how do we learn to trust each other? How do we learn to have faith in each other? It is through repetitious acts. At some point, we figure out that our mothers are going to feed us every day. Why? Because they feed us every day. Something happens over and over and over and over again, and you start to have faith that it will happen tomorrow. But you didn't have faith the first day. And it's the same in any kind of relationship. How do I learn to trust you? How do you learn to trust me? It is repetitious acts that develop the faith. We're not born with faith. If anything, we're born with skepticism. We have to learn faith. We have to practice faith. Okay? And this is what's going on here. God is showing us how to have faith, but at the same time, because we're not learning very quickly, okay? No, because some people don't. Because we're still in the, who are you anyway? No, and that's important because it's going to lead me to the next thing. That was a setup line that I practiced, okay? When all of these tests start, God says, where is it? I should have put the, Ori Amari, do you have a chumash earlier? Ani Adonai Rofecha. I think it's. You know what the problem is? The pages are very, very fragile and hard to turn quickly. Okay, I got it. Page 370. Now I know why I got it, because it was on the same page. I started turning pages and then I got lost. If I had just stayed on the same page. Look what God says. Verse 26. God said, if you heed the voice of the Lord your God and will perform which is right in his eyes and listen to his commandments and observe all his statutes, all of the diseases that I placed on Egypt I will not place on you, as I am the Lord your healer. This is a very important line. I am your healer. Now, meanwhile, I passed out these source sheets and I haven't used them. So, but maybe you were looking at it, so it's good. But think about it for a second. If you were a Jew in that moment, what do you know about God? Pretty much what you know is, this guy gets really angry, and when he does, he wreaks awful destruction. Look what they've witnessed. This guy, don't get on this guy's bad side, because you'll end up dead. That's not a basis for love. And God knows that. And God has to go through a tremendous image change. And here's the beginning. He's actually going to mess it up in the next Torah portion. But he's starting here. He says, I'm the Rofei, I'm the healer. You know, when something goes wrong in life, our lovers are so powerful, they're such a powerful force in our life, that sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where we can think about our lovers as being the cause of our problem, whatever problem that is, or they can be the solution to the problem. And whether or not the love will last often depends upon which choice do we make? Do I see my lover as somehow contributing to the problem that I'm facing? Or do I see my lover as contributing to the solution of the problem? And it's the same with God. I have a problem. Sick. Lost my job. I can see God as contributing to the problem. Or I can see God as contributing to the solution. And here God comes right out and says, I need you to think of me as contributing to the solution. I'm the Rofei. I'm the doctor. I didn't give you the disease. I'm going to get you out of this mess. That's true in our relationship with God, because you can look at life and you can blame God for so many things, or you can see God as the solution. As I said when I was here last, if you think about God in terms of power, then you are likely to blame God for whatever's going on. If you see God through the vision of love, you are more likely to see God as the solution. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. I got my 10-minute warning for those of you who... Okay, which means I gotta move on. Okay. And all of these things, again, are in the... so trust me, if we went to the source sheet, then I wouldn't have time. Oh, but the source sheet says one other thing, which I want to make mention. The source sheet, let's just look at it. Then we'll look at one thing. It's on the page 2. I guess that's the back of the first page. You see about 6-7 lines down. But according to its literal sense, the meaning is, for I am the Lord who healeth thee and teacheth thee the law and commandments, in order that thou mayest be saved from diseases, from a difficult life. Like a physician who says to a man, do not eat this thing, lest it will bring you into danger from this disease. Okay, so God is talking about the fact that God is going to give us mitzvot, and a lot of mitzvot, and the things that we have to do and things that we can't do. How do I want you to look at it? Don't look at it as a power play. That's very childish. Okay? Children look at parents as control freaks. You want to control my life. And the answer is, I don't really care about controlling your life. I just want you to understand that you can't come home at 2 o'clock in the morning because it's dangerous. But they'll say, you're controlling my life, because they're young and they're stupid. But when they have children, they'll figure out that you were smart. Okay? You were doing the right thing. It was just a pill that they didn't want to swallow. And here, the Torah is coming and saying, look, there are a lot of things that lovers demand of us that we don't necessarily want to do. But if there are things that we don't want to do, or there are things that they don't want us to do that we want to do. But again, I've made my bet that if I listen to you, I will become a better person than I could ever have become on my own. And therefore, I am willing to when the doctor says, don't eat this because you're going to get sick, I'm not going to eat it. And like if the doctor ever said to me, don't eat pizza, I think I'd shoot myself, but I guess I would have to stop eating pizza. Okay. So that's also a beautiful understanding that our lovers are our healers. Okay, finally. Remember at the very end of the Torah reading, probably you don't remember because it was such a sensational Adon Olam that you've probably forgotten everything else that happened. But at the end of the Torah reading, we confront our first and paradigmatic worst enemy, Amalek. And there is a battle that ensues, and God wants to help us. Okay? Because when your lover is attacked, right? When your lover is attacked, what do? You have to go in. You have to save your lover. But it's an interesting way. It's not like God kind of swoops in like he did with the Egyptians. Because if God was true to form, then God would have just pulled the rug out under the Amalekites and we'll be done with it. But this time around, it doesn't happen that way. This time around, God says, or Moses says, presumably Moses is taking instructions, but Moses says, you guys fight. Joshua, pick an army. We have to actually pick up swords now. This is the first time. We didn't have swords. Jew hasn't held a sword for 210 years. So if you say, wait, excuse me, you want me to do this? I don't know how to do this. This is an experienced army. We haven't held a sword. We haven't been allowed to hold a sword for centuries. It is a task that I cannot do. And Moses says, no, don't worry, you go do it. And I, when my hands are raised like this, you are going to be victorious. But if I have to put my hands down, which he did, but then they held them up, as long as my hands are up, you'll be fine. So what's going on here? Let's look at the Rashi. Rashi is quoting, I'm sorry, it's not the Rashi. Well, that's a really nice Rashi, but I don't want to do that. We don't have time to do that. So you'll do it. The last page, Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. This is a Mishnah that says, and it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. It may be asked, did the hands of Moses make war when he raised them, or break war when he lowered them? I mean, did Moses have magic hands? Rather, the verse comes to tell you that as long as the Jewish people turned their eyes upward and subjected their hearts to their Father in heaven, they prevailed. But if not, they fell. It's a beautiful lesson that our lovers can't always solve our problems. But our lovers can always be there to inspire us to be stronger than we think we are. And we, of course, have to do the same for our lovers. And sometimes, going one step farther, hey, Mark, how about, can you give me 2 minutes? Okay, so sometimes we need someone to lead us in that direction, like the hands of Moses. Sometimes we need someone to say, listen to your wife, listen to your husband, listen to your lover, listen to your children. Listen to your children. Listen to your parents. That's what Moses is saying. God can't spend all of eternity coming down and sweeping out the rug from under your enemies. It's just not going to happen. That's not how life works. You have to accept responsibility to fight your own battles in life. But if you keep your mind, if there's something that will keep you on, your attention on your lover, this is why maybe soldiers carried pictures of their wives in their backpacks. Okay, when nothing else is left, I have a picture of my wife. And that brought courage. That's what's happening here. So we can't depend on our wives or our husbands or our lovers or our children to do everything for us, but they can inspire us to be better and stronger and more successful than we are. Okay, I'm actually gonna, is it okay if I stop here? Okay, good, I'll stop here. Maybe if I can.
Not really.
Talk to the powers that be here. Can we do one more? Can we do one more source? Okay. Let's do one more source. This is about the classic. You don't need the Chumash anymore. This is the same of staying with Amalek. If you look at page 2, the Rashi on verse 17. No, let's go back to 377. I want you to see something. Amalek is 381, so I want to be on 370. 379. Verse 7 is the last line of the page. After the whole to-do with water and hitting the rock and not. Verse 7. And he called the place Masad Meribah, due to the quarrel of the children of Israel, and due to their trying, their testing of God, saying, is God in our midst or not? Now imagine considering the possibility that God was gone. It sounds absurd. It sounds absurd. But perhaps early on in a love relationship, before all the trust, before the faith, the idea that I would wake up one morning and my lover would not be there. Immediately after that comes Amalek. And Rashi, quoting the Talmud, wants to make the juxtaposition. I was being very generous of spirit. Let me be less generous of spirit. How dare you not see me? This is the other way of approaching, is God in our midst or not? I was being generous in talking about the young lovers, but now let me talk about the more experienced lovers. How dare you not see me? I'm not seen in this relationship. I seem to have disappeared from this relationship. Sometimes people feel that. Being taken for granted. Is God here? I don't know. Where's God? Where's God? Okay? But that's part of being in love. This happens sometimes. And you get angry when you're not seen, when you think that when someone thinks you've disappeared. And then Amalek comes and gets attacked. So look at this Rashi. Scripture places this section immediately after the preceding verse to imply, am I ever among you and ready at hand for everything you may need, and yet you say, is the Lord amongst us or not? Okay? I mean, this is God. I mean, I've done everything for you, and you don't see me. It's like, it's either you think I've disappeared or you're just taking me so for granted that I've disappeared. So now let me show you what it's like when I actually disappear. Let's see what happens if I go away and I'm not protecting you anymore. By your lives I swear that the hound, Amalek, will come and bite you. And you will cry for me. And then you'll know that I'm here. And it gives a mashal, a parable. It may be compared to a man who carried his son upon his shoulder and went out on a journey. The son saw an article and said, Father, pick that thing up and give it to me. He gave it to him, and so a second time, and also a third time. And then they met a certain man, and the son looked at that man and said, have you seen my father anywhere? Whereupon his father said to him, don't you know where I am? And he threw him off of his shoulders, and a dog came and bit him. Sometimes we take our lovers for granted. Sometimes we're actually riding on our lover's shoulders, and we forget where we are. This all worked out in the end. And hopefully it does for all of us. But again, this is I'm just going to finish how I started. We're seeing love begin. We're seeing what we hope will be love begin. And all of the trials and tribulations, all of these little moments, whether it be calling somebody a king or it's all stuff that we can learn for our own relationship with God, because it's never simple, it's always complicated, it's always a zigzag path, and the love of God is always an end game. But it takes work, just like the work that it takes to be in our other love relationships. No, now I'm really done. Okay.